The original Planet of the Apes from 1968, starring Charlton Heston, is one of my favorite movies of all time. Objectively, it is one of the top science fiction movies ever made. Today I'm going to be reviewing this amazing film and giving you my take on it. If that sounds interesting, let's hop into it. What's up guys, my name's Dominic, welcome back to my channel. If you love movies, then you're in the right place and should consider subscribing down below because I post movie content every single day on this channel. The Planet of the Apes franchise is one of my favorites of all time, and the first original film from 1968 is my favorite of the bunch. Today I'm going to be giving you guys the positives of the film, the negatives of the film, and after I give you those, I'm going to give you my full take on it with my score out of 100. Now let's get right into the review. First up, we got the positives of this film. Firstly, it is in my opinion, it's such a cool idea for a film. The fact that these astronauts were sent on a mission but crash land on a planet full of intelligent apes where everything is kind of backwards. There's some cool parts where it kind of just shows the backwards of this world, where they're like, the apes are like talking to each other and they're like, oh, you know what they say, human see, human do, which is obviously the exact opposite of what we say, monkey see, monkey do. So that was some cool things, and yeah, so just little nods like that was pretty cool in my opinion. And kind of on paper, like now that I'm saying it out loud, this seems like a kind of a weird idea, but like it somehow works for me. Like this film is like super entertaining. I don't know how this idea works, but it definitely does. The execution is near perfect, and it just makes a weird idea like this work out into an all-time classic film. Also, Taylor's character is a little bit of an annoyance when the astronauts are traveling and exploring the planet in the first act, but as soon as they get captured and his throat gets wounded, you kind of start to feel sympathy towards him, you know? You immediately start to connect with him and his hopeless sense of just not being able to do anything. It's just beautifully written, so at first you're like, I don't know about this guy, he seems a bit annoying, arrogant, whatever. But then as soon as they get captured, you're like, I feel for this guy, and it's just amazing, the way they can write a change of heart for a certain character like that. You really hate the antagonist in this film because what they're doing seems really questionable. The scientific research when they're just performing experimental brain surgery on helpless humans seems you're I don't agree with that. This is what are they doing? And their motives are questionable. It's never really told what their full motives are, and for that you're why are they even doing this? There's not that much of a point. So for that reason you hate them, and that's a positive because you're supposed to hate the antagonist. That's the whole point of an antagonist. And lastly, we have the protagonists. We have the protagonists that are other than Taylor are also very likable because they have good intentions for Taylor, who is the main character obviously, and they just want to help him out and help him escape, whatnot. Now finally, for the positives, the film has so many iconic lines and scenes, just like Pulp Fiction, just like Citizen Kane. There's some when Taylor gets caught and he's finally able to speak, and he screams the classic line, get your stinking paws off me, you damn dirty ape. This one was just amazing, and the first time I watched this film, I think I genuinely jumped up and I was so happy for him. I'm he finally got his voice back. It was just an awesome experience, and yeah, it was just a big sigh of relief. Also, the ending, I won't spoil it for you guys, but it is one of the most iconic endings of all time to date. You ask any movie buff, film buff that's seen a bunch of movies, they'll be yeah, that's one of the best endings of all time, one of the best twist endings. It's just insane. It's crazy. I definitely recommend you watch this film. Don't get the ending spoiled for you, and it'll be insane. Alright, now for the negatives of this film. I don't actually have too much negatively to say about this film, but the first thing I have is the first act of the film. After they crash land, after they crash land on the planet and are kind of just exploring and going to see if they can find food, water, that kind of stuff. It's like, I understand it's crucial for developing the plot and like the characters and their kind of relationships, so you kind of feel for them when, stuff hits the fan later on. But it's extremely slow and I find myself bored during a lot of it. There's like a few good scenes where there's some nice banter and you can kind of a sense of progression, but for most of it it's just like almost like a montage scene of them just like walking around a planet, which it's not bad, but like it's kind of boring. Secondly, we have the dated makeup of the apes. Even though I personally think it's like absolutely amazing for the time, like in '68, that was like crazy that they could even do that, that there's like the people and then they actually had the makeup on top. So they looked like apes and their mouths moved when they talk. It was insane. But it doesn't really live up to today's standards, especially considering when you look at like the reboots with like the CGI apes and they just look phenomenal. But personally, it doesn't really bug me all that much because first of all, it's from '68. I wouldn't really expect anything more from it. But also it's like, it gives the apes a more like intelligent human feel because they look still kind of like humans, but they do look like apes and they talk like humans, they walk like humans. That gives them the feeling of intelligence, but also it gives me the sense of like old nostalgia, but when I knew that like, oh, CGI wasn't good enough back then. It just makes me feel good inside because I just love those old movies and I just love getting that feeling of like nostalgia and like old charm that you get when you're watching a good old film. And so this one doesn't really bother me, but it could bother you. And that's it for the positives and negatives of this film. Now for my score. But really quick, before I give you my score, I rewatched The Seven Faces of Dr. Lowe the other day, and I wanted to revise my score for that film. And I want to give it an 89% now. I think the reasoning for my change was because I rewatched it. I still love it. It's probably still in my top 20 films of all time. But I think my initial, after my first viewing, I was like, oh, this film's awesome. I love it. Let's give it a really high score. But then looking back at that video, it was only a couple percent off Pulp Fiction and Citizen Kane, and I was like, I couldn't really justify that. So I have to change it to 89%. Still a very, very good score. Love it. One of my favorite films of all time. But yeah. So now for Planet of the Apes, I'm gonna give this film a 94%. It's a fantastic film. By no means is perfect, but that's okay. It's an amazing film, one of the most rewatchable films for me in my opinion, and I highly recommend you check this one out. And that'll do it for my review of the original Planet of the Apes from 1968. If you enjoyed, don't forget to smash that like button as it helps support my channel, and also subscribe down below for daily movie content just like this. Also comment down below if you've seen this film, and if you haven't, I definitely recommend you check this one out. Anyways, that's it for me. I'll see you guys in the next one.